I'm going to be teaching you how to paint a spring landscape using just a few supplies. So I have my canvas here. It's an 11 by 14, but any size would be fine, or even a sheet of paper. I have a size 8 filbert brush, and again, any size brush is okay, and some people like to use a lot, but I just like to use one brush as much as possible, and sometimes get some smaller ones if you need. I'll be using just some acrylic paint. These are the colors on my palette here. We'll be using some ultramarine blue, some cerulean blue, some white, some cadmium yellow, cadmium red, and orange, and a pink. I also have a couple over here together. I have the ultramarine blue and the cadmium yellow, and I'll be using that to mix my own green a little bit later on because I like the way that turns out, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then I have some cadmium red here, and I'll show you what that's for in a little bit. It's also a good idea, if you can, to have 2 bowls of water instead of just one. That way your water, you don't have to change it very often. If I do one rinse in here, I get all the gunk off, and then one more rinse to get it really clean. That way you don't have to constantly be switching your water. Okay, I'm gonna do just a quick little sketch on here before we start painting, just so that we have something to go off of. Oh, I forgot we were gonna stop in between.
That's okay.
Is that okay?
No, it's
okay.
fine.
Okay. Let's see. And it's okay right here?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
I think, okay, I'll be up like that. Perfect. And let me get it. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to be using my canvas the landscape way. I'm going to start out by making a horizon line. That's the line between the sky and the land. And okay, so I'm going to be using my canvas the landscape way. I'm going to start out by making a horizon line. That's the line between the sky and the land. And I'm going to make it a little bit higher than halfway. Just going to make a few soft curves here so that it's not totally flat, but I don't want to have any big mountains in this picture. And I'm going to add a few extra lines just to give it some depth. And I like to have water in my picture, so we're going to add a little river here. I'm going to start way in the back, and I'm going to have a line that's going to come at an angle and just keep curving wider as I get towards the bottom. And then I need to go back and put a second line to make it look a little bit thicker. So I'm going to start out really close to the first line, and as I get closer, it's going to keep getting further and further away to give us that perspective of the river getting closer. This could also be a road before the color gets on there, so you can use it for either one. We're also going to add a little extra detail on here. So right here where we have this curve close to us, I'm going to add a line straight down and then have it follow the same line here. This will be like the river bank. And then right here too, where we can see a little bit of this edge here, we have a little bit of a line there. And that's all we need to do for that part. And then I'm just going to draw in a few trees. I like to have a few apple trees, just making a soft cloud-like shape. A couple lines. I don't need to do a lot of details because we'll be adding that with the paint. And then I'm going to make a cloud-like shape that's going to start just a little bit above here, but it's going to come way down here by the river with 2 bigger lines coming down. This tree's a lot closer so that I'm getting that perspective in there. I like to spread them out a little bit so that it looks realistic, not like they're all stuck in on just one side. Okay, now I'm gonna get the paint out. Okay, I'm gonna start with some Cerulean Blue up in my sky. I just have my clean dry brush. I don't need any water yet. Just taking a little bit on my brush there. And just back and forth, kind of in these X-like shapes. Gives you a nice smooth coverage. Lots of times people like to take, when they're first starting, and make these long straight lines. And you can do it that way, but it takes a lot longer and uses a lot more paint. If you go back and forth with this X shape, it fills it in a lot quicker. Gives you a nicer, solid color. I usually would go and paint the edges at the same time. So then I would want to make sure to do my blue around the edges when I did my blue sky. Now I'm going to rinse my brush. The first time in the first bowl here, just gently wipe it off and then give it a second rinse in my cleaner water. I like to have sunrises and sunsets and lots of color in my picture, so that's why I didn't go all the way down. I want to have my other colors. I want to have some yellows and reds and pinks, and if I did all my blue first and then tried to add my yellow, I would have a green sky. I'm actually going to start with some pink right there so that if it does touch the blue, I get a little purple instead of having the yellow so close. So I'm going to just do the same thing here going across. You can see I'm getting a little bit of that purple in there, and I'll go back and smooth that out after I get the color on. Okay, now I'm going to, oh, I missed a little spot here. Going to get a little more paint on there. And now I'm going to go back. I haven't washed my brush, but I don't have any extra paint on there. I'm just going to use the thin part here to just kind of smooth that in so that it looks a little bit more natural, going from the blue to the purple to the pink, smoothing that in there. Okay, and then I'm going to switch colors, so I'm going to rinse my brush again. I'm going to go on to some yellow now. Same thing, going across with those X marks and adding a little bit up here on the pink. If I start to get some of that mixture on my brush, I just wipe it off. I don't even have to rinse, just wipe it off. Get some more yellow. If it goes onto my trees or my grass a little bit, that's okay. We're going to cover all that up anyways. Okay, and then I'm going to go back and smooth it out again here. So that I'm getting some of those mixtures in there. So now I have some orange also. Nice, bright, colorful sky. I'm washing my brush because I'm ready to go down onto the landscape part. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to be making my own green. So I have my colors all ready here. And I have a lot more of the yellow than the blue. I want it to be a brighter green, so I have more yellow. The more blue I add, the darker it's going to get. Just gently stirring it. I don't have to mix it into one solid color. If I keep doing that, stirring and stirring, it will get just painted onto my plate and I won't have a lot of color to work with. The rest will end up mixing right on my canvas. So I have a little bit of a darker color here. I have all that blue added in. And we're going to put that back here. I'm still using those X brush strokes to get a nice coverage of paint. Okay, now before I go down any further, I don't need to rinse my brush. I'm going to use that same color, but I'm going to add a little bit more of the yellow so that I get a little brighter closer up. So adding a little yellow there. And I'm just going to stir it into the edge here. I don't want to get it too dark. Just using some of that mixture from before. I've got my brush all loaded up. Then I can finish filling all this in. I'm still using those X brush strokes. If you wanted it to look more like a meadow, you could do something more like this at an angle to get some more of that long grassy look. But I want it to look more like some soft hills. Just being a little careful here. Like I said, I'm going to cover up anything I get on my tree or my water, but I don't want to cover it all up on purpose. Okay, one more little bit of the grassy area here. Okay, and then I can rinse my brush again. Okay, now I'm going to add some onto the water here. I am going to use the ultramarine for that to start with, and then we'll add some other color to it later. So just using the side of my brush. This is a bigger brush, so when I want to get this thinner area here, I'm just churning it, so I'm just using that thin part at the top. And for the water, I do like to use those long brush strokes, not that X shape, because I want it to look like the water moving along. If you pick up some of the green or something like that along the edge, that's okay, because water usually isn't a bright, clear blue anyway. Okay, rinsing my brush again. I'm not going to do anything with those riverbanks yet until we get a little further along. Okay, and then I'm going to pull out a different green for the trees, so that all the greens don't blend together. And I'm going to take a little scoop of my yellow here, just to lighten it up a little bit, because it's pretty dark. So if I add a little yellow there, I'm going to get a little bit more of a spring color. And when I fill in the trees, just using some curved brush strokes and going along with the shape of the tree. So I keep that fluffiness to them. I want them to look nice and full. Now usually I use a pencil so I don't have these lines showing, but I wanted you to be able to see. So if you were making this picture and you had dark pencil lines or had used a pen or something, don't worry about those lines showing, because they'll go away as we add some more detail and some more color. I want to try to keep adding color on them right now, because the paint just gets into big piles of gobs and doesn't really cover it up any better. And just leave those for now. Rinse my brush again. Okay, and the reason that I had the red here is because I want to add some of that with my green to get a nice brown. So I'm just going to blend just a little bit in. I can always grab more if I need. I like to start with just a little bit. Okay, so now I have a brown. I just need a little bit because I'm only using it for a few spots. So I'm going to use it for my tree trunks here, just using that thin part of my brush again. Over here. Just following the shape of the trunk as I'm filling it in. Okay, so now I have all my space filled in here. I can go back and add some details. Okay, so I'm going to go back and get a little touch of white on my brush. Just barely have any on there. Just going to add a few strands here. Instead of making big puffy clouds, I'll just have a few wispy clouds going across here to tie the sky together a little bit more. And then I'm going to rinse. I didn't have much paint on there, but I want to get any that was on there off. And then just gently go back, just so I get a little bit more of a wispiness to them. Push them in a little bit more there. Okay, just a quick rinse because I'm going to go back to some more white. So taking a little bit of white on my brush again, just a touch. I'm going to add some going, just using that thin part of my brush, adding some long brush strokes going along here. Give it the look of water moving, give it some more detail. I also like to take just a little touch of the Cerulean Blue, that lighter blue there. Just go back and give that a little touch also. Okay, give it a rinse. And I noticed I missed a little yellow, so I'm just going to touch that up quick. Just a tiny little bit of yellow here along the horizon line. Okay, I'm also going to take some yellow. Just put a little bit up here in this front tree. Getting a lot of green because it's still wet, so just wiping that off. I'm going to add a couple of big gobs of the yellow there. And just leave it like that for a minute. And then I'm going to go back with some of that darker green. Mix that in there by it. Okay, and then I'm going to make sure I have a clean brush again, and then I'm going to blend them together. Just very lightly touching it so I don't pull all the paint back off. And a little touch up for that green there. And then just for a little added detail, I like to have a few shadows showing. So I'm just going to add a little bit of some blue with this brown just to make it a little bit darker and to make it a little bit different than the tree trunks. And just very lightly, I don't want the shadows to be too bright, and I'm imagining my sun's kind of over here, so my shadows are going to be going off to the edge. Just very lightly on there so it doesn't take over my whole picture. And then I can go back and just smooth it a little bit more with a clean, dry brush. That same color might be good for putting a few extra details on your tree trunk. Just adding some lines on there to get that texture. And now you have a spring landscape.
Make your own video for Community Ed. Contact us at getlearning.org.